What's up, skate fam? Welcome to D's Skates. I'm your host, David Lulliette, and today's highly requested episode is about none other than inline skate maintenance. So, what do you mean by inline skate maintenance, you might ask? Mainly, one, how to center and set the mount for your inline frames onto your inline boots, and two, how to rotate your wheels. That's really important. That's a huge question I get all the time. And then three, we're going to discuss how to make sure that your bearings are properly pressed into your wheels and what that might affect if they're not properly pressed into your wheels. So I prepared a little list for you of tools that are going to make your life way easier. You don't have to have all these tools, but I highly recommend all of them. Number one, this little tool right here. I recommend this. You probably got one of these with your skates, so you don't have to worry about it, but this is depending on what brand you bought, it's Allen or Hex or whatever. But this is for your axles and also for the bolts that hold your frames onto the bottom of your boots. And then two, and this is really important in my opinion for the rotation of your wheels, and that is a good, solid, accurate set of calipers. Now, I use the Vinca calipers, which is recommended by iFixit. They sell these, but you can actually get these on Amazon. I'll link them in the description below. It'll set you back $25, but I promise you it's going to be worth it. And if you buy them through my link, I will actually get a little commission. I mean, a tiny one, but I will get a little commission, so you'll be helping me out too. And then three, this one you don't have to have, but again, it's going to make your life way easier, and that is a proper bearing press, not one of the little hand tool, dinky, junky things. I personally cannot stand those. I grew up in a roller rink where we had bearing presses, and they're so much more efficient and easier to deal with, and you can get so much done way faster. The one that I have here is made by Powerdyne. It's really for quad skates. I don't recommend it for inline skates, especially if you're really into like the big wheel blading, because this thing is only going to handle about 80 millimeter wheels, and anything bigger than that is going to be too big. It's not going to set properly. But Bont makes one that will handle up to 125 millimeters, and that's definitely the one that I recommend. So again, I'll link it in the description to make your life a little easier. And also, if you notice, there's some timestamps in the description because we're covering a few different things. I don't want you to have to click through the video and waste your time trying to find one thing. So if you only want to hear about rotating your wheels or setting your frames, just scroll down and click the timestamp. And with that being said, let's head over to the studio and talk about how this is actually done. If you take a look at the bottom of your boot, you can see where the frame is set to mount. These Powerslide Imperials are a strict 165 mount, and some boots like these Seba Highlights will come with 5 or even 7 holes under the heel and ball of the foot. Whether you have 165, 180, or 195, the concept for centering them is the same. The difference is how far apart the bolts are positioned. Trinity mounts are also going to be a similar concept, just with a different array of bolts. Mounts like USD and UFS are typically on aggressive boots that have one central line in the sole, so that's not really an issue here, but on the numerical and Trinity frames, you usually have the option to slide the frames back and forth. I know there are various reasons why people don't want them centered, but I personally think they're best that way. The trick to centering them is first to realize that what you see as the center line of the toe is not the center of the sole. Do not try to center with the middle of the nose. If you're looking for them to run true center, you'll want the front to be kind of pointing more toward the middle toe. That's going to ensure that your knees are pointed straight when you stand and roll. The mount holes should be set along the center, so you can get your calipers or a ruler and check along the center of the holes to see what I mean. Or you can use the quadscape method and measure the center of the ball and heel horizontally and then draw a vertical line straight along these points. But having mount holes for inlines really saves us all that trouble. Once you can see the center line, go ahead and drop in the bolts, making sure you've got the washers between the frame and the bolt head. If you're having trouble with your frames coming loose often, you might want to grab some split lock washers and add those. Just be aware that they're often thicker than regular washers and may have an effect on the clearance of your wheels. Also note that when frames are designed, they're typically set up to be centered the way you see here, not only from side to side, but also forward to backward. So be aware that when you buy new frames, you may end up with clearance issues if you try to mount too far forward or too far backward at wonky angles and such, but this will all depend on the size of your foot, the length of the frame, and the size and clearance of the wheels. Tighten the bolts in nice and snug. I like to get the first one just tight enough to hold the frame in place, and then set the other one in. Then I go back and add some torque to each one back and forth until I'm satisfied. This ensures that you don't shift the frame angle while tightening. Check to make sure they're still centered after you've tightened them down. Next, we're going to rotate our wheels. If you skate on them for a while without rotating, you'll notice that the inside edge of the wheels will usually be worn down more than the outside, though how long this takes depends on your personal habits. Just check the angle of wear from center of the wheel to the outside edge, and you'll see that one side will look flatter and the other is more rounded. The goal here is to flip the wheels so that the rounded edge faces with the inside of the boot. As far as switching their positions goes, well, that's where the calipers come in. Personally, I like to always have a rocker, so I measure each wheel down the center line and set them up so the two larger ones are positioned in the center, or the single largest one if you're using a tri-scape frame, and then place the two smaller ones on the front and back positions. How you want to fine-tune that rocker is really up to you. I personally put the smallest on the front, the largest behind it, and then taper the back two wheels down from that. This mimics the dance rocker of a figure skate frame, agility in the toes, stability in the back from ball to heel. Again, you can do this however you want. Now we'll check our bearings and spacers. Make sure to keep track of the positions of your wheels along the way. If you're having trouble with a wheel not rolling properly and you're sure the bearing doesn't need a cleaning, it's probably because you don't have the bearing properly seated inside the hub. This is why I say I do not like those dinky little hand tools for bearings. There's no substitute for a proper bearing press. Sometimes a bearing will look right, but it's actually angled just enough to cause the axle to create some angular pressure as it's inserted, and this will have a negative effect on your roll. Also, spacers have a tendency to move around, and that can cause problems. With a press, you can drop on the bearing, add the spacer, then stack the wheel, and finally add the last bearing on top. Close it into place, and then press all of it together down one single line. I like to slide the wheel into center and spin it to make sure everything is straight and the wheel rolls freely. And finally, we can put the wheels on. Again, making sure the rounded edges go to the inside. This should be the easy part, but sometimes even the self-centering satellite spacers, say that 5 times fast, self-centering satellite spacer, self-centering satellite spacer, self-centering satellite. Anyway, sometimes even the self-centering satellite spacers shift around, so once you've got the wheels lined up with its respective hole, it's best to exercise some patience with inserting the axles. If the axle won't go in, you can rotate it, jiggle it around a little bit, or change the angle you're holding the skate at to shift the spacer around. After you get it through, tighten the threads by hand first so you know you haven't crossed them. And if you feel too much resistance while turning, back it out and try again. Don't ever force the threading. That's how you strip things. Last step here is to check the tension. You want the axle snug enough that it's not going to come out, but not so tight that it squeezes the frame together and hinders the wheels from rolling properly. And there you have it, Skate fam. You're all set and ready to hit the ground rolling. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up so more skaters will see it and get the help they need. Make sure you're subscribed to D's Skates for more helpful tips and tutorials like this one. And also, don't forget to check out the links to tools and parts and my Teespring merch in the description below. Thanks for coming and supporting D's Skates, and I will see you the next time I lace up.